괜찮습니다. 끝나고 뭐 이거 있는 거 아니에요? 끝나고. 네, 애가 통잠을 자기 시작했는데 그치만 이게 어제 또 그 육아 전문가님이 오셔가지고 얘기를 들었더니 아이한테 길게 봤을 때는 애가 그냥 울더라도 한 15분 정도 주는 게 뭘 다 쓰고 네, 안녕하십니까? 안 나오네요. 네. 네, 안녕하십니까? 잠시 후 9시에 2022 서울 시그니스 세계총회 개회식이 시작됩니다. 장내에 계신 참석자분들은 모두 자리에 앉아주시기 바랍니다. 감사합니다.
Good morning. The opening ceremony of SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul will soon begin. Please silence all portable electronic devices. Thank you very much.
네, 잠시 후에 9시 2022 서울 시그니스 세계총회 개회식이 시작됩니다. 장내에 계신 참석자 여러분들은 모두 자리에 앉아주시기 바랍니다. 감사합니다.
The opening ceremony of SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul will soon begin. Please silence all portable electronic devices. Thank you very much.
네, 전 세계 가톨릭 커뮤니케이터들의 일치와 화합의 시간 2022 서울 시그니스 세계총회에 오신 여러분 환영합니다. 네, 이렇게 본격적으로 이 세계총회가 이제 시작이 될 거고요. 다시 한번 안내 말씀드리겠습니다. 2022 서울 시그니스 세계총회 개회식이 시작이 되고요. 소지하고 계신 휴대폰은 진동이나 무음으로 해주시기 바랍니다. 감사합니다.
Good morning, everyone. The opening ceremony of SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul will soon begin. Please silence all portable electronic devices. Thank you very much.
네, 전 세계 가톨릭 커뮤니케이터들의 일치와 화합의 시간 2022 서울 시그니스 세계총회에 오신 여러분 환영합니다.
Time for solidarity and harmony among the all Catholic communicator around the world. Welcome to the SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul.
네, 저희는 이번 개회식 사회를 맡은 김지현 야고보,
차예린 에디터입니다. We are your MCs for the opening ceremony. I'm Edita 차예린, and to my right,
제임스 김지현.
반갑습니다.
네, 코로나19 바이러스가 재확산되고 있는 이 어려운 상황 속에서도 한마음 한뜻으로 모이신 모든 분께 감사 인사드립니다.
Thank you to everyone who've gathered here despite COVID-19.
네, 먼저 특별 공연으로 개회식을 시작해 보려고 합니다. 첫 무대는 한국 창작춤의 데모라 불리는 김매자 선생님과 창무 댄스 컴퍼니가 함께하는 무대입니다.
We'd like to start the opening ceremony with a special performance by Kim Meja, the godmother of Korean creative dance and Changmu Dance Company.
네, 이번에 여러분에게 선보일 작품은 샤이닝 라이트인데요. 새로운 세상에 대한 희망과 기쁨을 모두와 나눈다는 메시지를 담고 있습니다. 가톨릭 성가, 클래식, 한국 음악을 편곡해서 작업한 음악 또한 관전 포인트가 되겠습니다.
This performance is titled Shining Light and contain a message of hope and joy for the new world. The music has been arranged by combining Catholic chants, classical music, and Korean traditional music.
네, 한국 고유의 전통을 바탕으로 한 놀라운 창작 세계는 물론 이번 시그니스 세계총회가 전하고자 하는 메시지를 느끼실 수 있는데요. 먼저 뜨거운 박수로 샤이닝 라이트 무대를 청하겠습니다.
Let's give a big round of applause for Shining Light.
네, 이번 총회 주제이기도 한 디지털 세상의 평화를 신문지로 형상화한 건데요. 역시 전통을 현대로 가져온 아름다운 무대였습니다.
The performance used newspaper to embody the theme of this Congress, Peace in the Digital World.
네, 다음 무대는 CPBC 소년소녀 합창단입니다. 이번 세계총회 주간 방송사를 맡고 있는 가톨릭 평화방송사의 2009년에 설립된 어린이 합창단입니다.
The next performance is by the CPBC Boys and Girls Choir, a children's choir established in 2009 by the CPBC, a Catholic Peace Broadcasting Corporation. CPBC is also a host broadcaster of this World Congress.
네, 2022 서울 시그니스 세계총회 주제곡이죠. 저희 여기 모였나이다의 노래를 부르고 뮤직비디오에도 출연한 CPBC 소년소녀 합창단의 무대를 큰 박수로 청해 보겠습니다.
They will sing the theme song of SIGNIS Seoul, Lord, we are gathered here. They also appeared in the music video. Please welcome them on the stage.
말씀으로 창조하시고 구세주고 내시하리니 깊은 그 소식 전하라 여기 부르셨나이다 세상에 평화의 메시지 전하는 시그니스
네, 천사의 목소리 또 평화의 목소리는 바로 이런 목소리를 두고 하는 말이 아닌가 싶습니다. 다시 한번 화려하고 뜻깊은 무대를 선보인 두 팀에게 그리고 소년소녀 합창단에게 큰 박수 부탁드립니다.
Once again, please give them a big round of applause.
이렇게 특별 공연으로 성대한 문을 열었는데요. 이제 개회 선언으로 나흘간의 여정을 시작해 보겠습니다.
Now let's kick off our 4-day journey with the opening announcement.
2000년 이탈리아 로마에서 시작해 4년에 한 번
Held every 4 years since its beginning in Rome, Italy, back in 2000.
가톨릭 커뮤니케이터로서의 사명과 결의를 다지는 시간.
A time to strengthen our mission and determination as Catholic communicators.
2022 서울 시그니스 세계총회 디지털 세상의 평화.
The SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul, Peace in the Digital World.
이곳 대한민국 서울에서
Here in Seoul, Republic of Korea,
개회를 선언합니다.
we announce its opening.
네, 다음으로 이번 2022 서울 시그니스 세계 총회를 맞아서 프란치스코 교황님께서 보내오신 메시지를 들어보겠습니다. 교황님께서 역사상 처음으로 평신도 장관으로 임명하신 분이죠. 교황청 홍보부 파울로 루피니 장관이 대독해 주시겠습니다.
Next, let's listen to message from Pope Princess for SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul. He is the first layman to be appointed as minister by the Pope. Paolo Lufini, the Vatican's prefect of the Dicastery for Communication, will read out the message. Please welcome him on the stage.
Your Excellencies, dear all sisters and brothers, friends in Christ, journalists working in broadcasting network, newspapers and publication, I am honored to bring to all of you gathered for this Congress a message of greetings from His Holiness Pope Francis. I'm not going to add my words to his, I will simply lend my voice to his words. Before I start, I would just like to greet Archbishop Peter Jeong Tek, the Archdiocese of Seoul, Mr. An Sun-soo, President of the SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Organizing Committee, Mrs. Ellen Hosman, President of SIGNIS World, Mr. John Byung-kook, Deputy Minister of the Culture, Sport and Tourism, Bishop Sakai of the Archdiocese of Osaka, Bishop Moon Chan-hoo of the Archdiocese of Jeju, Father Luke Shim Chon-yok, Chancellor of Sogang University, Mr. Nam Yoon Chin, Chairman of the Board of Directors of KBS, and Lorenzo E. Yeon-chun, President of SIGNIS Korea. Our gathering here as representatives of every part of the world is a testimony of our being one, seekers of the truth in a divided world. And now the message of the Holy Father. I read the message. I send greetings and good wishes to all taking part in the SIGNIS World Congress being held this year in Seoul, combining face-to-face meeting and virtual conferences. As an international association for the Catholic communication professional, it is fitting that you are meeting in Seoul, Korea, a land whose history of evangelization shows the power of the printed word and the essential role of the laity in the spread of the gospel. May the story of St. Andrew Kim and his companions 200 years ago confirm you in your own efforts to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ in the languages of contemporary communication media. It is appropriate that in these days marked by new outbreaks of violence and aggression in our world, you have chosen as the theme of your World Congress, Peace in the Digital World. The digital media revolution of recent decades has proved to be a powerful means of fostering communion and dialogue within our humanity. Indeed, during the months of lockdown due to the pandemic, we saw clearly how digital media could bring us together, not only by disseminating essential information, but also by bridging the loneliness of isolation and, in many cases, uniting whole families and ecclesial communities in prayer and worship. At the same time, the use of digital media, especially social media, has raised a number of serious ethical issues that call for wise and discerning judgment on the part of communicators and all those concerned with the authentical and quality of human relationship. Sometimes, in some places, media sites have become places of toxicity, hate speech, and fake news. In meeting this challenge, SIGNIS can play an important role through media education, networking Catholic media, and countering lies and misinformation. I encourage you to persevere in these efforts, paying particular attention to the need to assist people, especially young people, to develop a sound critical sense, learning to distinguish truth from falsehood, right from wrong, good from evil, and to appreciate the importance of working for justice, social concord, and respect for our common home. I would also encourage you to consider the many communities in our world that remains excluded from the digital space, making digital inclusion a priority of your organization planning. In doing so, you will be making a significant contribution to spread of a culture of peace grounded in the truth of the gospel. In my message for this year World Communication Day, I spoke of listening as the first and indispensable ingredient of dialogue and good communication, and asked journalists to develop the ability to listen with the ear of the heart. More than 21 else, the apostolate of listening belongs to you as Catholic communicators. For communication is not just a profession, but a service to dialogue and understanding within individuals and larger community in the pursuit of a serene and peaceful coexistence. Listening is likewise essential to the synodal journey that whole Church has undertaken in these years. It is my hope that in your communication you will contribute to this process by assisting the holy and faithful people of God in our commitment to listen to one another, the Lord's will, and grow in the awareness that we participate in a communion that precedes and includes us. In this way, too, your effort to foster peace in the digital world will help to create an ever more symphonic Church whose unity is expressed in an harmonious and sacred polyphony. Dear friend of SIGNIS, with these sentiments, I send you my prayerful good wishes for your work and for the spiritual fruitfulness of this World Congress. Upon you, your families, your colleagues, and all those whom you serve, I invoke God's abundant blessing of wisdom, joy, and peace. I ask you, please, not to forget to pray for me. Rome, St. John Lateran, 15 July 2022. Let me add just a few words. The Pope also asked me to bring to each of you a special rosary blessed by him. You will be able to receive at the exit from the farewell party on Thursday as a lasting sign of our communion in prayer, which will accompany us in the months and years to come after this meeting. Thank you so much.
네, 교황청 홍보부 파올로 루피니 장관의 대독이었습니다. 프란치스코 교황님의 메시지였고요. 프란치스코 교황님께서는 디지털 미디어의 양면성에 대해 언급하시면서 우리 가톨릭 커뮤니케이터들에게 경청의 사도직을 수행해 줄 것을 청하면서 기도와 축복을 보내주셨습니다.
Referring to the dual nature of digital media, Pope Francis sent prayers embracing us Catholic communicators, urging us to serve as apostle of listening.
네, 다음으로는 시그니스 월드 헬렌 오스만 회장의 환영사가 있겠습니다.
Next, Helen Osman, President of SIGNIS World, will give a welcoming speech.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and not only those here in the hall, but those who are with us online, literally from around the world. I also want to extend a particular gratitude to Dr. Paolo Ruffini, Prefect of the Dicastery for the Laity, and for bringing to us those words of comfort from our Holy Father. Thank you very much. And also, as you mentioned, Dr. Ruffini, we're very grateful to those who are hosting us. I want to again express gratitude to Your Excellency Archbishop Jeong Peter, to Hasang So Daniel, chairperson of the SIGNIS World Congress Organizing Committee, to Father Luke, thank you for hosting us here at Sogang University, and a special greeting to and thank you to the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Culture, Sports, and Tourism, Jeong. Thank you very much. We're so grateful to be able to be here in Korea and to open our World Congress here in Seoul. When I was elected president of the at the World Congress in Quebec in 2017, I wonder who among us could have predicted that such terms as COVID-19, fake news, Zoom, or TikTok would become part of our normal vocabulary. And here's another new word which with Catholics are becoming more familiar: synodality. When I first heard that Pope Francis was calling the church into synod to talk about synodality, I must admit I was perplexed. What is this thing called synod? Now, as we are little more than a year from the gathering of our bishops in October of 2023, I think I am beginning to understand. This thing called synod is a big deal. It has the potential to be an important moment for our church, such that when we convene for the next SIGNIS World Congress in 4 years, we may look and wonder at how little we knew about synodality when we gathered in Seoul. This year, the SIGNIS World Board of Directors determined it was important for SIGNIS to enter into the synodal process. As one SIGNIS member told me recently, the synod is not just about communications, it is communications. Synodality is being described by the Holy See as walking together. That phrase brings to mind the story in Scripture of the 2 disciples walking to Emmaus and encountering Jesus. In their walking together, they listened to each other. They listened to Jesus, and Jesus listens to them. Were not our hearts burning within us? The disciples asked one another after Jesus leaves them. As I partake in these formal listening sessions, and as I discern what I think our Holy Father and the Holy Spirit are asking of the Church in this synodal process, I often find my heart burning as well. When we communicate deeply on a spiritual level, we listen not just to the words, but to the experiences of others, and our entire self, mind, body, and spirit become engaged in the communication. The synodal process creates communion through communication. And what am I hearing? Some themes are rising, and one of them is that young people, both men and women, are seeking a place at the table. We're so delighted we have our young journalist here with us and others who are participating in the metaverse. Pope Francis has identified clericalism as a major obstacle to increasing collaboration and co-responsibility of laity, especially women. Clericalism, of course, is not just exhibited by clergy. People who have control, whether a pastor or a layperson, sometimes have a hard time letting others share in decision-making. The irony is that while that may allow the person who thinks they're in charge to have a sense of control and think that he or she is protecting our church, what is really happening is a stifling of the Holy Spirit. There's a story of a child who receives a baby chick as a gift. The child is enthralled with the soft down of the bird, its color, its delicate chirping. The child determines his chick will never grow up into a hen with a sharp beak and stiff feathers. He holds the chick tight every day, thinking this will prevent the chick from growing into an ugly hen. And he does prevent the chick from growing. It dies from suffocation. Are we seeing a diminishment of our mission as the Catholic Church because some are afraid of letting the Spirit flourish? Over and over, as a Catholic journalist, as a Catholic communicator, I have heard stories of people who are knocking, waiting, seeking, asking to have a role that is more than just showing up for an event or participating in prayer or donating money. They want to help shape the future of the church, to make the faith relevant and real. When we, as members of SIGNIS, invite others to walk with us, we invite them not just to cooperate, but to collaborate. Not just to follow, but to be co-responsible. Not just to be recognized, but to be respected. Not just to show up, but to become engaged and enrich all who are present. When we experience synodality, as I think our church is calling us to experience it, I believe we will also experience peace. Peace is a deep understanding that we are each necessary to build the body of Christ, to create a world in which every person's human dignity is respected. It takes courage and faith to unclench our fist and to allow the Spirit to move among us. The rewards, however, can be a church of which we cannot even imagine, a church truly synodal, listening and walking with one another. And I look forward to listening to all of you and walking with you these days in our World Congress. Thank you for being here.
시그니스 월드 헬렌 오스만 회장의 환영사였습니다. 이어서 이번 2022 서울 시그니스 세계총회 한승수 조직위원장의 환영사가 있겠습니다.
Next, Han Sung-soo, President of the Organizing Committee of the SIGNIS World Congress 2002 Seoul, will also give a welcoming speech.
Dr. Paolo Ruffini, the Vatican's Public Relations Minister, His Holiness Archbishop Peter Jong-sun-taek of the Archdiocese of Seoul, Helen Osman, President of SIGNIS World, and Luke Shim-jong-hyuk, Chancellor of Sogang University, Mr. Nam Young-jin, Chairman of the Board of Directors of KBS, and Mr. Chun Byung-guk, Deputy Minister of the Culture, Sports and Tourism, and members of SIGNIS from 33 countries around the world, and distinguished guests and participants here today, welcome to all of you, and I thank you for your participation. I'd also like to take this opportunity to welcome those who are joining us on Zoom and YouTube, as well as those who are visiting the SIGNIS Metaverse platform. And most of all, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to His Holiness Pope Francis, who has expressed his strong support for this Congress. And once again, I'd like to thank Minister Paolo Ruffini for reading his message on his behalf. As was mentioned in the message of His Holiness Pope Francis, by mentioning that the history of Korean evangelization shows the power of the printed word and the essential role of the laity in the spread of the gospel, we are strongly aware of the fact that our role is very important in the future of the spread of the word. Also, His Holiness went out to mention that it is very timely that the subject and the theme of peace in the digital world has been selected, given the fact that during the last couple of years, as we went through the pandemic, the potential and the risk of digital media have been highlighted and was mentioned once again in his message. It has the potential to alleviate isolation and loneliness and gather together as one family and as a community, all of us in the church. But at the same time, the risks involved, including hate speech, fake news, those have also been highlighted as well. Distinguished participants, Korea is well known for its technology adaptation and innovation for IT infrastructure. But at the same time, it is the only divided country in the world. And from that perspective, it is all the more meaningful that this Congress is being held in Korea with the theme of peace in the digital world. I sincerely hope that you'll be able to make full use of the Korean digital environment and be able to look into what we can do in terms of making use of the digital media. What we should do and what we can do are the things that I ask you to look into. At the same time, with the 3 study days events, the International Journalist Forum and the International Youth Forum, as well as cultural tours and visits, will provide you with more information on what will be possible in the future as well. In the Pope's message, the apostolate of listening has been highlighted once again. His Holiness has emphasized that we need to listen with the ear of the heart, and that we must be able to support the people who are committed to grow in the Lord. So from that perspective, I would like to emphasize once again the importance of creating the symphonic church, united in a harmonious and sacred polyphony. Until the end of the Congress, please make sure that you, with me, will pursue these goals. The world is currently still suffering from the pandemic, but I sincerely hope that all of our schedules will be successfully accomplished, and I sincerely hope that you have a very fruitful Congress and return safely back home. Thank you.
네, 시그니스 월드 회장님과 또 조직위원장님의 뜻깊은 말씀 그리고 환영사 감사합니다.
Thank you to the President of SIGNIS World and Organizing Committee.
네, 2022 서울 시그니스 세계총회는 팬데믹 상황에서도 전 세계 곳곳에서 참석해 주셨습니다. 6개 대륙, 32개 국가에서 96명, 100명 가까운 96명이 직접 참가해 주셨고요. 국내 참가자와 사전 온라인 신청자를 합치면 300여 명이 함께하고 있습니다.
That's right. 96 guests from 6 continents and 32 countries are here in person. Taking domestic participants into account, we have about 300 people joining us right now.
네, 그리고 유튜브와 줌, 또 메타버스를 통해 전 세계 곳곳에 가톨릭 커뮤니케이터들이 함께하고 있습니다.
And we have Catholic communicators all over the world joining us via YouTube, Zoom, and Metaverse.
네, 그럼 개회식을 축하하러 오신 내빈 여러분을 잠시 소개하겠습니다.
Let me introduce the distinguished guests who came here to celebrate the opening ceremony.
문창우 제주교구장님 함께하십니다.
Bishop Pius 문창우, Bishop of Diocese of Jeju.
오사카 교구 사카이 주교님 함께하십니다.
Bishop Paul Sakai Toshihiro, Bishop of Archdiocese of Osaka.
로렌스 존 시니어 시그니스 월드 부회장님 함께하십니다.
Mr. Lawrence John Sr., Vice President of SIGNIS.
폴 사마수모 시그니스 월드 부회장 신부님 함께하십니다.
Father Paul Samasumo, Vice President of SIGNIS.
오거스틴 루르투세미 경 전 시그니스 회장님 함께하십니다.
Sir Augustine Rurutusemi, former president of SIGNIS.
에마뉴엘 본의 시그니스 회계님 함께하십니다.
Mr. Emmanuel Bonnet, general treasurer of SIGNIS.
교황청 홍보국 국장 나타샤 고부카님 함께하십니다.
Ms. Natasha Govka, representative, Dicastery for Communication.
리카르도 야네즈 시그니스 사무국장님 함께하십니다.
Mr. Ricardo Yanes, SIGNIS secretary general.
마리아 드 로렌조 시그니스 사무부국장님 함께하십니다.
Ms. Maria de Lorenzo, assistant secretary general.
차이아 데지 아누차 시그니스 아시아 회장 신부님 함께하십니다.
Father Chayadeh Yanucha, president of SIGNIS Asia.
마기마이 프라가삼 시그니스 아시아 부회장님 함께하십니다.
Mr. Magimai Pragasam, vice president, SIGNIS Asia.
월터 이해 지리카 시그니스 아프리카 회장 신부님 함께하십니다.
Father Walter Chikwandu Ahiajirika, father, president, SIGNIS Africa.
알베르트 버크 시그니스 아프리카 부회장 신부님 함께하십니다.
Father Alberto Bock, vice president, SIGNIS Africa.
아코스 코박스 시그니스 유럽 회장님 함께하십니다.
Mr. Akos Kovacs, president, SIGNIS Europe.
마갈리 벤 리스 시그니스 유럽 부회장님 함께하십니다.
Ms. Magali Ben Rees, vice president, SIGNIS Europe.
아가타 프리바이 시그니스 태평양 회장님 함께하십니다.
Ms. Agatha Pribay, president, SIGNIS Pacific.
파멜라 알멘 드 쿠엘라 시그니스 북미 부회장님 함께하십니다.
Ms. Pamela Aleman, vice president, SIGNIS North America.
시카레스 시라칸 시그니스 인터내셔널 부회장님 함께하십니다.
Mr. Sikaret Sirakan, vice president, SIGNIS International Group.
이 밖에도 함께해 주신 모든 분께 다시 한번 환영과 감사의 인사 마음을 전합니다. 시간 관계상 모두 소개해드리지 못한 점 양해 바랍니다.
Once again, we'd like to welcome and thank everyone for joining us. Please understand that we couldn't introduce all of you due to time constraint.
네, 다음은 서울대교구 교구장이자 이번 2022 서울 시그니스 세계총회 공동 명예대회장을 맡고 계신 정순택 베드로 대주교님의 축사가 있겠습니다.
Next, Archbishop Peter Jeong, the head of Archdiocese of Seoul and co-chairman of SIGNIS Seoul, will give us congratulatory speech. Please welcome him onto the stage.
전 세계 가톨릭
Welcome to the SIGNIS World Congress, which is a gathering of all Catholic communicators around the world. I would like to sincerely congratulate on the holding of the Congress and warmly welcome everyone participating on and offline for this event. And I'm deeply grateful for this special message from the Pope. The humankind has solved the issues that we face wisely despite so many challenges. And amid COVID-19 and proliferation of variant virus, it seemed that our gatherings will be forever delayed. However, our desperate hearts for meeting one another and communication with one another allowed us to be gathered here together. We also have Zoom platform, YouTube, and Metaverse platform to allow others to participate who were unable to join us in person. Also, our young participants have prepared the Metaverse platform, which is a new medium for this Congress. A communication technology that includes everyone is a right way for us to communicate one another in a digital world. This Congress is being held under the title Peace in the Digital World. And we hope that this Congress serves as an opportunity for us to rethink about people who are isolated from technology. As technologies evolve, we worry about growing magnitude of digital divide and information divide. Technology divide creates and deepens conflict and confrontation. Especially, technology gap between generations can deepen generation differences. Technology should be used to benefit everyone, and we have to work together to enjoy digital technology together and to be happy together. Due to the pandemic, it is to my regret that there are less face-to-face interaction as we see more non-face-to-face interaction. The church needs to play a role to advocate attractiveness of human meetings and gatherings. We have to make effort to expand in our society the good value that the church has. In order to do so, I would like to kindly ask Catholic journalists and communicators to take a lead in this effort. Due to pandemic, we have difficulties to gather together in one place to communicate. But I would like to thank our organizers for making this hybrid conference possible so that we can meet in person as well as through online. Through this SIGNIS World Congress, we hope to go beyond the limits of space and share love and peace in God. Thank you.
네, 다음은 대한민국 문화예술 전반의 국정 운영을 총괄하는 문화체육관광부 전병극 차관님의 축사가 있겠습니다.
Next, Vice Minister of Culture, Sports and Tourism, Jeong will deliver the congratulatory speech.
안녕하십니까.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to be a part of the SIGNIS World Congress 2022 in Seoul, Korea, and I'd like to extend my sincere congratulations to you on the successful opening of the event. I'd like to express my sincere gratitude as well as congratulations to Archbishop Peter Jeong and President of the Organizing Committee, Daniel Hansungsu. At the same time, I'd like to take this opportunity to extend my welcome to Mr. Paolo Ruffini and Helen Osman, as well as all the representatives and members who are present here and also online. You have been a part of executing the peace and the love of Christians all throughout the world through journalism and media. And from that perspective, it is very meaningful that we are holding this forum of communication for the pursuit of peace in the digital age. Under the theme of peace in the digital world, I sincerely hope that this Congress will be able to provide a basis to include many of those who are marginalized in the digital spaces and to create a community for the future. At the same time, I sincerely hope that you take the opportunity to visit many cultural sites in Korea and get the most out of your schedule. Once again, I'd like to extend my sincere congratulations on the opening of the Congress. Thank you.
네, 전병극 차관님의 축사 감사합니다. 지금 우리가 모인 이곳은 가톨릭 교육 이념을 토대로 예수회가 설립한 서강대학교인데요. 시그니스 세계 총회 행사가 무사히 이루어질 수 있도록 큰 도움을 주셨습니다.
We are gathered here at Sogang University, founded by the Jesuit based on the Catholic educational philosophy. The university helped us hold the SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul.
네, 그래서 서강대학교 총장 심종혁 루카 신부님을 모시겠습니다. 축사를 박수로 듣겠습니다.
Let's welcome Father Luke Simjong-hyuk, President of Sogang University, who will deliver us congratulatory speech.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to sincerely welcome Archbishop Jeong, President of Organizing Committee Han Sung-soo, Vice Minister of Culture, Sport and Tourism Jeon Byung-guk, President of SIGNIS Helen Osman, Prefect of Vatican Dicastery for Communication Paolo Ruffini, and all those who attended this event. It is a great honor to have and welcome the SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul, a world conference for Catholic journalists held at Sogang University. Sogang University is a prestigious Catholic university in Korea, established by Jesuits in 1960. We have presented a new paradigm of university education for the past 60 years. Sogang installed a TV studio for the first time in Korean university and introduced a supercomputer to provide cutting-edge educational facilities. The free multi-major system laid the foundation for convergence and complex education, and the student-based, student-designed major system was introduced to create an environment in which students can pioneer their own future. Recently, to lead the rapidly changing era of the fourth industrial revolution, the digital innovation plan is being gradually promoted. Sogang provides artificial intelligence and software education for all students, regardless of their majors, whether liberal arts or sciences, and has established the School of AI and the Graduate School of AI to foster creative talents. In addition, by establishing the Metaverse Graduate School for the first time in Korea, we are laying the groundwork to lead the future digital industry, and furthermore, we are promoting the Metaverse campus, that is the Metaversity project, which will become a new platform for university education. Dear SIGNIS World Congress participants, in order to overcome the sense of isolation widely experienced by COVID-19, our society has begun to pay attention to virtual reality represented by Metaverse beyond the online space. People can actively communicate in the Metaverse beyond the limitation of time and space, and it is expected that they will be able to experience a variety of new things that are difficult to achieve in reality. These changes are also being seen in education. In this metaverse space, vast amount of information can be exchanged quickly and conveniently, and participants can actively communicate. Active communication will naturally blur the boundaries between disciplines, and both students and professors will be able to broaden their horizon to other majors. This is why Sogang University is promoting the Metaversity project. However, Sogang is always concerned about the ones who are left behind. Just like the topic of this Congress, hyper-connected yet alone, there will be those who may feel isolated even in the age of multi-directional communication. Among the vast amount of information, identifying fake news and gaining trust are becoming the most important things. Therefore, the digital innovation that Sogang pursues does not mean not only the development of technology. We want to utilize our digital innovation capabilities in a way that enriches people's lives. For example, when everyone calls for AI plus X based on technology, Sogang will pursue X plus AI based on existing values. The theme of this Congress, Peace in the Digital World, is in line with values pursued by our university, making it even more meaningful. I hope that this Congress on our campus will be an opportunity to spread the will of God to the world by uniting the spirit of SIGNIS and Sogang. Thank you very much.
네, 우리 모두가 한 자리에 모일 수 있게 이렇게 공간을 허락해 주셔서 저희도 얼마나 감사한지 모릅니다.
Yes, I absolutely agree. We are very grateful for being able to hold this Congress at the Sogang University.
네, 그런데 사실 이번 2022 서울 시그니스 세계총회는 오프라인뿐 아니라 유튜브, 또 줌 등 온라인으로도 함께할 수 있는데요. 그 중에서도 특별히 메타버스라는 획기적인 방법을 시도했습니다.
The SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul is not only taking place offline, but also online through YouTube, Zoom, and so on. Among them, we are trying a new innovative method called metaverse.
팬데믹으로 직접 참여하지 못하는 전 세계 가톨릭 신자 모두 세계총회가 열리는 기간 동안 시간과 공간을 초월해서 메타버스를 통해 실시간으로 행사에 참여하실 수 있습니다. 그럼 메타버스 활용 방법을 직접 설계한 GG56에서 소개해 주시겠습니다.
All Catholics around the world who cannot participate in person due to the pandemic can't participate in the event in real time through metaverse, transcending space. Now, GG56, the creator of this metaverse, will show us how to use it.
Hello everyone. I am so glad to introduce the SIGNIS FR, a mobile application for 2022 SIGNIS World Congress Metaverse. Search SIGNIS FR in Google Play or App Store and download the app. Now we are entering the SIGNIS Metaverse. On the right, you can check the event information. And on the left, quick menu is available, and just click the place where you wish to visit. By clicking the animations, various gestures are available. This time, let's check out the guest book. Here you can view who wrote what. You can also view and revise your comments. Using the quick menu, you go to the World Congress Hall. Let's check the small meeting room first. To enter, you have to enter the code. If no room is opened, you can open a meeting room by yourself. By clicking the white circle on the floor, you can sit at a meeting. Now let's go to the conference room. When your avatar is located at the blue circle, the information of each conference room is displayed. By clicking the Participate, you will enter the room. Okay, let's move to the digital cathedral. Let's go all the way up to the altar. If you click the prayer room on the right top, you get to the prayer room. Let's take a seat. Click the exit, you return to the digital cathedral. This is the SIGNIS Hall. It showcases the exhibition booth of sponsors as well as 15 SIGNIS organizations across 6 regions including Asia, Africa, Latin America, and Caribbean, North America, and Rome. Here you can watch some promotional clips. Shall we move to the media hall? Let's check out the radio desk. Next, we are going to the cinema hall. By locating your avatar in front of a theater, you will enter. You'll find your avatar seated in front of a screen. By clicking on the full screen, a movie will be streamed. Now here we are at the World Peace Hall, where you can donate or learn about some organizations. Now let's see what else is in the SIGNIS Metaverse. Here we've reached out our last place of SIGNIS Metaverse, Meta Pilgrimage. Now a pop-up comes out And it says, here we are at the Myeongdong Cathedral. Here, a 3D modeling of Myeongdong Cathedral is showing, and you feel like you're inside the cathedral. Let's check out the other sacred places. This time we are at the Senamto Martyrs Shrine. You can see and appreciate all over the place in 3D, as if you were actually there. Click chat at the left lower corner. You can send messages and chat with your friends. How was the guide tour to 2020 SIGNIS World Congress Metaverse? Thanks for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful and amazing experience there. SIGNIS Metaverse. Go download SIGNIS FR. Thank you very much.
이번 2022 서울 시그니스 세계총회가 디지털 세상의 평화라는 주제처럼 오프라인 중심의 전통적인 행사와 또 메타버스를 통한 디지털 공간이 융복합되는 새로운 형식의 문화축제가 될 것을 기대해 봅니다.
Yes, we hope that SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul will be a new type of cultural festival that combines traditional offline events with digital spaces through metaverse, just like the theme, Peace in the Digital World.
이번 개회식을 시작으로 이어지는 오늘의 일정을 잠시 안내해 드리겠습니다. 잠시 후에 10시 30분부터 이곳 정화상관 국제회의실에서 초연결 시대에 고립된 인간을 주제로 스터디데이즈 첫 번째 시간이 시작됩니다. 또 점심 식사 후에 오후 2시부터는 특별 공연을 시작으로 국제 언론인 포럼이 진행되고요. 저녁 6시 30분부터는 서강대학교 성이냐시오 성당에서 환영 미사를 드리도록 하겠습니다. 미사 후에 전 세계 가톨릭 커뮤니케이터들의 친교를 다지는 환영 만찬이 서강대 곤자가 컨벤션에서 있을 예정입니다. 자세한 사항은 공식 팸플릿을 참고해 주시기 바랍니다.
I'll briefly introduce today's schedule following this opening ceremony. From 10:30, the first session of study days will begin here at the International Conference Room of Jeong Hasang Hall under the theme of Hyperconnected Yet Alone. After lunch from 2 p.m., the International Journalist Forum will be held starting with a special performance. From 6:30 p.m., we will have welcome mass at the St. Ignatius Cathedral of Sogang University. After mass, a welcoming dinner will be held at Sogang University's 곤자가 Convention to strengthen the friendship of Catholic communicators around the world. Please refer to the official pamphlet for further detail.
네, 이것으로 2022 서울 시그니스 세계총회 개회식을 마치도록 하겠습니다.
That concludes the opening ceremony of the SIGNIS World Congress 2022 Seoul. Thank you very much.
Good morning. The first study days of the SIGNIS World Congress 2020 Seoul will shortly begin in 5 minutes. All participants in the hall, please take your seats. Thank you. This is a short announcement before our session. The first session of study days of the SIGNIS World Congress 2020 Seoul will shortly begin in 5 minutes. All participants in the hall, please take your seats. Thank you. Now, the first session of study days of the SIGNIS World Congress 2020 Seoul will begin shortly. Please put your cell phone on vibrate or silent mode. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. The first session of study days of the SIGNIS World Congress 2020 Seoul will begin shortly. Please put your cell phone on vibrate or silent mode. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. The first session of study days of the SIGNIS World Congress 2020 Seoul will begin shortly. Please put your cell phone on vibrate or silent mode. Thank you. Now we will begin the study days of the SIGNIS World Congress 2020 Seoul. I'm MC Mikaela Sammy Lee. Starting today, study days will run for 3 days under the theme of Peace in the Digital World. Study days, which is the highlight of the SIGNIS World Congress, is an event where experts in various fields, including journalists, scholars, professors, and priests share their knowledge and experiences. With respect to the topic of each session, one keynote speaker will give a presentation, and 2 panelists will introduce current situation, and another 2 panelists will present outlooks and suggestions for the future, which will be followed by a plenary discussion by all participants. In line with the theme of the Congress, Peace in the Digital World, all programs are being conducted online and offline at the same time. It is simultaneously translated into Korean, French, and Spanish, as well as English, and transmitted on YouTube, Zoom, and Metaverse. We appreciate all of you who tuned in. Now let's begin session 1 of the study days with the topic of hyper-connected yet alone. Let's watch a video first about the topic.
Session 1, Hyper-Connected Yet Alone. In the midst of COVID-19 pandemic, mankind was able to clearly see the times we are living in. Thanks to the advanced intellect of modern civilization, people were able to use apps to purchase necessary items and pass the time enjoying countless contents on OTT platforms when they were being quarantined or even when the city was in lockdown. However, on the other side of the planet, those who were not fortunate enough to enjoy such benefits had to suffer serious difficulties. They experienced problems accessing information about the COVID-19 virus, and shortages of vaccines and medicines left them exposed to the risk of the virus. This pandemic made us realize the painful truth that the conveniences we're enjoying are not shared equally. Pope Francis stressed that in the midst of the pandemic, the humanity needs to join in solidarity with the spirit of caring to overcome difficulties.
Alla pandemia del virus vogliamo rispondere con la universalità della preghiera, della compassione, della tenerezza. Rimaniamo uniti, facciamo sentire la nostra vicinanza alle persone più sole e più provate.
However, such problems of human isolation are not only unique to poor countries. The increase of single-person households is a global phenomenon, and its proportion is greater in developed countries and large cities. According to a survey conducted by the European Union Statistical Office in 2018, 33.9% of all households in Europe are single-person households. In the past, the elderly who retired were more likely to feel socially alienated. But as the number of single-person households increased, the number of young people who complain of loneliness is also rising. We can communicate with strangers through social network services, but such encounters do not solve the fundamental feelings of loneliness. It may seem as if we are fully revealing our daily lives on social media, but we are in fact showing only the aspects that have been carefully selected, and our true selves are hidden behind a mask. In In such trends of times, we are constantly connected with others, but we never truly meet. When God created man, he said, "It was not good for the man to be alone." Humans are social animals, and forging relationships is our natural instinct that was instilled in us from the time we were created. Therefore, what roles can media play in the hyper-connected era to prevent individuals from being alienated? If a large number of people overcome the limitations of the digital and truly reach out to each other, we will be able to achieve true communion even in this hyper-connected age. So, what can Catholic communicators do to realize this purpose? We listen to the insights of experts for the recovery of isolated individuals and communities in this hyper-connected era.
Then I'd like to invite a speaker to give a keynote speech on the first topic of the study days of the SIGNIS World Congress 2022, Hyperconnected Yet Alone. He has been a professional journalist since 1979 and was appointed by Pope Francis as the first layman prefect of the Vatican in 2018. In a short period of time, he successfully launched the Vatican News Portal by collecting and organizing various media materials of the Vatican. I'd like to invite Prefect Dr. Paolo Ruffini of the Vatican's Dicastery for Communication. Please give him a warm round of applause.
Good morning again, and allow me first of all to express my gratitude. I'm truly happy to be here with you, to be here in person, here, really here. This is important to me, and not because I underestimate the possibility that technology has been making available to us for a long time, among them that of traveling while remaining in one place, nor because I overestimate the ancient world with no interconnection, computers, or internet connections. Technology today gives us things that just a few decades ago were unthinkable, like teleconferencing, telemedicine, e-commerce, metaverse. Technology has not transformed our world, it is part of what we are as human beings. It is a product of our ingenuity. It is based on our thoughts, on our ability to connect knowledge and to invent things that were not there before. Technology realizes a human idea. It brings into the world a product of the human spirit. It is based on the incalculable possibilities of humankind and of nature. It demonstrates man's role in the development of the world, and it undermines the fatalistic approach according to which there is no point in struggling against a fate that is supposed already written. On the contrary, man's work, his artistic and scientific technological creativity are divine characteristics. They are children of the divine breath that we carry within. That's why we are protagonists of our future, but only if we do not lose sight of our limits. Only if we don't think of ourselves as equal to God. And as long as we accept that there are and always will be things that technology cannot replace, like freedom, like the miracle of encounter between people, like the surprise of the unexpected, like conversion, outburst of ingenuity, gratuitous love, vision of future. That is why I think we have most than the duty, the need to be together. It is to live that beauty. And here is the paradox of our time. We are hyper-connected and also alone. Everyone in the hand, closed on themselves. The problem is precisely here. When there is no longer communication, but only connection, when there is no longer reality, but a substitute for it, that's when we need to question ourselves, to do a personal and collective examination of conscience, and answer some question with an open mind. How is it possible to be simultaneously hyper-connected and yet terribly alone? What is missing from our connection that can bridge this loneliness and that is strong enough to endure over time? What does this connection require in order to take root physically and not just virtually, in order to rediscover the value of the time that passes and not just the instant that follows? How can it help us to see the world as it truly is and to try to change it for the better? How can it contribute to starting or consolidating peace process and develop a culture of peace? Where is the answer to this question? Where is the solution that can restore to connectedness the soul that is too often lost? The solution that can give back to togetherness the value of sincere friendship, to interlocution, the uniqueness of dialogue, to appearance, the solidity of substance. Where is the answer that gives a dream the concreteness of a process and not the fragility of an illusion? If we think about this, the answers are within us. Even if it is darker under the lamp, as an old Korean saying goes, we already know them. We already know the answer. The only way to respond to the challenge of technology is not to think of it as an idol, but also not to demonize it. Not to believe that it has the task of redeeming humanity, but also not to think that its perdition depends on it. I think these two extremes delineate the field of our challenge, and it is the field of personal responsibility. Right here in Korea, in the Shrine of Solmo, Pope Francis, responding to a young girl, Marina, gave us the key to pursuing happiness in the telematic society. Marina had made a reflection on this. She, the Pope commented, told us something very true. You cannot purchase happiness. Whenever you buy happiness, you soon realize that it has vanished. The happiness you buy does not last. Only the happiness of love is the kind that lasts. We all sense the risk, sometimes if the certainty of being treated as things, objects that are bought and sold. Consumerism confuses short-term satisfaction for more profound and more lasting happiness. As Philippe Dominguez writes, consumerism has become the paradigm where we define our identities. To feel that we are somebody, we must consume. And so, according to the famous aphorism of Erich Fromm, we end up being what we have instead of what we are. We end up pretending to be what we are not in order to get a speck of attention. The virus of loneliness depends on this facade, and so the one of division. We know that we are much more than the things we possess. We know the truth of what we are, and therefore also the difference with how we appear to the others as if on a stage. We know the distinction between real meeting and its virtual prologue. We know the strength of technology, but also its weakness. We know that we are not just consumers, let alone object to be consumed. We know very well that only a relationship, a connection based on love can make us less lonely, can last, and make us happy. And love is based on the supreme fragility, which is the need for love, the need to love and be loved, to give and to give oneself. Here is the root of all communication and of any peacekeeping process in the digital era. Here is the reason why connection alone is not enough. Despite being drunk with narcissism, imprisoned in our selfishness and ambition, we still instinctively perceive the limits of the superb idea that technology is sufficient in itself and for us to satisfy our need to knowledge and relationship. We know deep in ourselves what we risk losing in hyperconnectedness if it is uprooted from reality and truth. As Pope Francis wrote in his message for the 53rd day of social communication, social network communities are not automatically synonymous with community. Too often, their identity is based on opposition to the other, the person outside, the group. Too often, we define ourselves starting with what divides us rather than with what unites us. This gives rise to suspicion and to the venting of every kind of prejudice, ethnic, sexual, religious, and other. And what ought to be a window on the world becomes a showcase of exhibiting personal narcissism. End of quotation. This is why so often we measure everything and understand nothing about the meaning of life, why we narrate things without understanding their meanings, without seeing them as part of a whole, and without full understand our role as communicators in enacting change. And this is why, in the end, instead, we experience only our solitude. Paraphrasing Oscar Wilde, we might add that we know everything, but unfortunately, that is all we know. Nothing. People know the price of everything and the value of nothing, I think is the full quote. There are indeed things that cannot be measured, things that cannot be purchased. Relationship, care, compassion, collaboration, and non-separation are the qualities that the reductionistic, technicistic, utilitarian technology paradigm does not contemplate. And it would be a glaring mistake to think of applying the same paradigm to communication and information. A different perspective is needed. This is where our witness as communicators, as network of communicators, as journalists, seeker of a truth that transcends us, builders of different way of making information, narrating through images, like with our photographs or films, comes in. Seoul is preparing to be the first city to cross as city the borders of metaverse, and you have seen how powerful it is right now. To make services more efficient in this way. This is an important point. It gives technology a perspective of service to the common good that goes beyond its current limits. It is a step that simultaneously revives the issue of happiness and loneliness. We have all been questioned for some time now whether this is the beyond that we seek, the more that we chase as a community, or whether, even in this case, the exponential increase in sensory connection will miss the goal of automatically and proportionally reducing the loneliness that plagues us, and building the togetherness in peace and justice and social justice we are longing for. What is the meaning of this beyond? What is the beyond of the contemporary era where we dream of finding remedy for our unhappiness? Perhaps this is the question where we need to start, from what helps us grasp the meaning of the beyond. From the ultimate sense, what makes us human. Because what makes us lonely is a connection that does not take on our own humanity. A connection separated from reality that divides us, closes us in ourselves, even though it seems to unite us. As Pope Francis writes in Evangelii Gaudium, to be self-enclosed is precisely the opposite of going beyond. It is to taste the bitter poison of immanence. The beyond we seek cannot be characterized by a caesura, a closure, a fiction, or even a function, but by rediscovery of what truly unites us with each other and with God. We are part of the same history. And here, the theme of beyond raises the question of the limit, of respect of the limit, of awareness of the limit. Perhaps, I think, we can understand the root of our hyper-connected loneliness only if we stop for a moment to look at what we as human beings have been up to in the world, appropriating it as if it were our property. And now we are alone, even though we are connected with the whole world. Therein lies the paradox of the vicious cycle. To take out of it, we must therefore find the true meaning of the beyond, which transcends the here and the now, the technology and the market. It transcends economical, numerical, and pragmatic canons. Since we are living through a transition of epochs, to look beyond requires a prophetic gaze. Like the writer Charles Dickens, we might say that we are in the best and worst of times, in the age of wisdom and of foolishness, in the age of communication and incommunicability, in the age of consumer globalization and also of indifference. But if the history we live is the place where salvation happens, it is up to us to help turn to good the time that's being consumed right before our eyes, asking to shape it. In a world that mistakes obliviousness for objectivity, the journalism is often attracted and corrupted by power. It is up to us to serve the truth together. We must open our ears and our eyes to the voice of God speaking through human events and facts. As Gaudium et Spes says, we have to weave ethics into technology, impregnated with that spirit of free gift and sharing that is the divine breath that animates us. Even in the information sector, if we think about it, what we are missing today is not so much the news, which moreover are not always true. We are missing relationship in the truth of an encounter that generated deeper, greater information. What we are missing is a reliable ecosystem that does not sell you or buy you, but serves you. To put truth in communion, to build community, is the only lasting answer to people's needs. In the integration process, which has by now superseded the distinction between television, internet, radio, print media, and social media, we can integrate service function with higher ones. the local and the global. This is the way to overcome loneliness and to turn frailties into strength, by making sure that from the synergy between us, between our media and our capillary presence on the ground, a new information network can spring as an alternative to the narrative of reality that feeds fear, ghosts, and divisions. We are already a network. What we lack is the humble and patient creativity of those who would not seek the fireworks of a moment, but a faithful relationship animated by the spirit that unites us. Giving oneself to others without wanting to become someone is the best and the most tested antidote to loneliness, and it is the opposite of what the miserly feeling that wants only to have from others, and that thinking to obtain the best this way generates the worst, loneliness and unhappiness. If I have to be someone, the Pope remarked, connecting on the beatitude dedicated to the poor in spirit, then I am in competition with others, and I worry excessively about my ego. I have everything that reminds me my fragility, because this fragility prevents me from becoming important, someone who is rich, not only money-wise, even well-known, everything. End of quotation. Instead, here is the paradoxical, surprising announcement of Jesus, a strange condition for a beatitude, poverty. And well, let me say that these also concern the word of communication, poverty. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Their relationship with others, their communication with others, and their search for truth are always open to encounter and surprises. Letting yourself be surprised is the opposite of thinking you already know everything and you can label everything. The pure in heart, said Jorge Maria Bergoglio before he became Pope, knows how to see, even in the most conflictual and painful situation, the find of good to be recovered. They take the time, they have the patience of time, they know that even information is based on the sowing and reaping process. The pure in heart know that communicating means persistently seeking a relationship. They do not resign themselves to living on substitutes or nostalgia, subjugated by the idea that what is right is not possible. They do not credulously chase the lying promises of the many sellers of a too cheap happiness. They create communion. They say beyond appearances. They see unity possible beyond any division. This is the challenge of good communication. This is the challenge of good journalism. This is also, I think, the challenge of SIGNIS. To find new ways for new communication, contaminating genres and languages, but focusing on dialogue rather than on marketing of ideas, on intelligence as moral category rather than on fanatical moralism of the crowd, on speech not as a din or a shout, but as a means of an encounter, and of images as unveiling rather than staging. Avoiding the idolatrous risk of self-referentially seeking the beauty to be narrated in every language. This call for creativity. The Pope said just a few days ago in Quebec, a creativity capable of reaching people where they are living, finding opportunities for listening, dialogue, and encounter. We need to return, said the Pope, to the simplicity and enthusiasm of the acts of the apostles, to the beauty of realizing that we are instrument of the Spirit's fruitfulness. We can offer this remedy to those seeking a way beyond loneliness, a way for peace. Here is a beautiful task for the man and woman of SIGNIS to be a network that unites, a network that liberates, a network, a woman of truth and beauty, faith and hope. To be the concrete, visible alternative to the web of confusing chatter where everything is true and everything is false, and where there is no more room for the truth of encounters. As the Pope always tells us, we need media that builds bridges and breaks down walls, working toward social cohesion. It is up to us, it is up to you, together, to create a network of searching for the good, the just, the beautiful, the infinite. We can create a network of witnesses, aware of the difference between the spirit that unites us with each other and with God as member of each other, and technology that, left to itself, deprived of the divine breath that animates our souls, does not perceive the love in which everything subsists. We are members one another is not just a figure of speech. It is the truth of who we are, even if we too often deny it. The world is not ready-made, therefore neither it is the digital world. We ourselves can change it for better or for worse, with our words, with our work. That is why we need to reinforce our being a reference point for cultural debate globally and in individual countries, and manage the potential conflict between freedom and responsibility. SIGNIS can help the whole Church to weave a network that is not satisfied with connection, but translates the gospel message into the world of multimedia without erasing the histories and the cultures of each country and the specificity of each language. By offering our network as a place of true encounters among people, we can be a witness to a different way of living our time, a way that is founded on the gift rather than on consumption, on giving for free rather than on price, on sharing rather than on hegemonic ambition, on union as remedy to ambition to divide ourselves from others and impose ourselves on them by standardizing them, on beauty rather than on sloppiness. I say this with Rome in my mind, especially the Dicastery of Communication where I serve. If the Vatican media do not know how to build and bear witness to this communion, ours will only be a mimicking of the world, yet another attempt to build a Tower of Babel. Our way, your way, the way of anyone animated by goodwill and who seeks to restore meaning to communication must be different. We could say, quoting what Korean poet Ko Un writes about the flower of an instant, we have already come across it, but we have not seen him. The poem says, on the way down, I saw the flower I had not seen on the way up. Let us so retrace the road. This path, in my opinion, entrusts us as community of believers to offer the world a different communication system. With humility, without boastfulness, with the awareness that we are useless servants, instrument of a mission that transcends us, we can do it, we must do it. This is why the work of SIGNIS is important and even essential. I know we all measure the difficulty of living up to the task entrusted to us each day, the gap between what we are and what we would like to be. But this is our time. Let us not waste it. Pope Francis always urges us to read the signs of the time. Everything is a call. Catholic communicators, Catholic journalists, friend of SIGNIS, all the men and the women of God we all are engaged in this difficult and great field of communication. We can be protagonists of a new humanism embodied in active and participatory communities. We can weave a new idea of citizenship. It is up to us to promote the stable and permanent involvement of young people from all over the world in our communication. We have to pass the baton to them. It is up to us to try to weave a multimedia universe, to be proud of it, for its freedom, for its openness, for its ability to create a boundless communities of belonging and sharing, for its ability to generate action, beauty, social justice. Our challenge is great, but within reach, if we allow the Holy Spirit to guide us. Together, we can build project on this. Maybe we can also find a way of fundraising for this. Unity is strength, division is weakness. SIGNIS can be more and more the arterial system of our communication that should be at the same time respectful of any culture and universal in letting the truth be told and at the same time understood. By rediscovering our being one, we can make our media a common space where local churches learn about each other and where even non-believers find answers to their fundamental questions. We need one another, we need people of goodwill, we need volunteers, we need professionals, we need to understand how extraordinary our service can be. We need to strengthen the link between Rome and local churches and to understand that every believer can or even must contribute to building this communal system based in humanity more than on machine technology, letting the message travel from person to person as something beautiful because it is true, beautiful because it is personally experienced, beautiful because it tells of the beauty of God and of humankind, and because it builds a togetherness that sweeps away any loneliness. This is our task. Maybe it goes against the tide, but as Wolfgang Goethe says, a kite can only rise against the wind. Thank you for having listened to me in my poor English.
Prefect Dr. Paolo Ruffini, thank you for your keynote speech. He elaborated on the terrible reality of humans becoming more and more isolated in this hyper-connected era in which the whole world is connected. Now, shall we start panel presentations on the topic? As I said, 4 panelists will make presentations followed by discussion together. Let's welcome all the panelists and debaters along with the moderator to stage with a big round of applause. Let me introduce the moderator for study session 1. He is a professor at Yonsei University's Faculty of Media and Communication and the head of the Urban Communication Center, who leads the Urban Communication Lab. I'd like to introduce Professor Kim Yong-chan, a scholar in media social theory and expert in communication, new media technology, and risk society. Please give them a big round of applause.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's my great pleasure to be a moderator of this study days session, the first session of study sessions in this event at SIGNIS World Congress 2022 in Seoul. I think in this session, I think we will reflect on and discuss very important and also a timely issue about social disconnection in this highly connected world. I hope that this morning we all have some insights about how we understand and also deal with such an oxymoron and even contradictory situation where we all show both solidarity and hostility and desire to stay alone and desire to hang around with others at the same time. But fortunately, we have such a distinguished panel of presenters who will share their thoughts on these issues this morning. So I really look forward to their presentations. Let me first introduce the first presenter of this morning, who is the Father Anthony Lodok from Thailand. And the title of his presentation is going to be Addressing Pastoral Communication Challenges in a Hyper-Connected Yet Alone World.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I will start with my presentation. Humanity is in the midst of creating and living out a new paradigm in social communication that holds tremendous ramifications for the pastoral and evangelizing mission of the church in the present and future. The ushering in of the digital age several decades ago has brought about exponential growth in the development and application of information and communication technology, now permeating every aspect of human life. With ICT impacting so many aspects of our personal and collective lives, it isn't surprising that the new milieu would present the church with pastoral challenges that either did not exist in the past or that have taken on characteristics unbeknown prior to the advent of the digital age. So I would like to explore in broad strokes the pastoral challenges and propose possible pastoral responses in a hyper-connected yet disconnected world. The first kind of disconnection is social disconnection. The impact of ICT on human life has generally been accepted as positive. Although ICT provides apparent ease of getting to know other people and engaging in conversation through digital means, the technology doesn't guarantee meaningful and long-lasting friendships. A large portion of millennials report not having a single friend, as well as constantly feeling lonely. Online communication tends to not reflect the true feelings of the individual, especially when ambiguous emoticons and smiley symbols are used instead of words to express what one really means. Pseudo-anonymity leads many people to exhibit less restraint in their use of language and images when communicating with others, leading to offensive and hurtful words online. Reduced direct personal interaction can lead to social disconnect with superficial and contrived relationships rather than greater connection and intimacy. In some extreme cases, people have turned to developing relationships with digital partners, such as electronic pets and robots and other interactive characters. The gentleman in the picture married a virtual idol and had a reception. Secondly, cultural disconnection. Inventors of the internet imagined a world where people from diverse religious and cultural social backgrounds, mediated by digital technology, can interact, exchange ideas, and benefit from the richness that each brings to these cyberspace encounters. However, cultural exchange has been far from even and mutual and not always beneficial. When exposed to each other's cultures, people, especially the youth, tend to be drawn to and assimilate the dominant flashy external aspects of cultures that they encounter rather than the deeply rooted and universally accepted human values. Blind adoption of foreign cultural elements can lead to the erosion of the local culture and create social tensions within one's own community. One's local language is also transformed and oftentimes distorted by incorporation of foreign words and expressions from the dominant language, such as English. Besides causing groups to adopt aspects of the dominant world cultures, what has been created through the development of ICT is a popular internet culture characterized by its own language patterns, style of communications, and even special signs and symbols that stand for particular ideas. Thirdly, religious disconnection. ICT provides a huge repository of spiritual and religious content online. In all religious traditions, adherents can avail themselves of these boundless online resources in order to gain spiritual nourishment. However, there is ambiguity and confusion regarding religious and moral authority because the internet environment allows anyone to produce and publish religious content online, leading to misunderstanding of the church's official teachings. The ever-increasing human preoccupation with digital spaces and activities present a challenge to traditional ways of living out our spiritual and religious lives as individuals and as a community of disciples of a Christ who incarnated as a human being in the world, an analog event, so to speak. There is also the trend towards privatization of spirituality with one's use of mass online prayer apps and abundant online spiritual content. We also see religious polarization with dynamics similar to social polarization due to social media and algorithms. And we also see a trend towards consuming religious content rather than silent prayer and contemplation. We also see superficial online piety, such as posting religious content, liking religious content, taking photos of religious events to post on social media, live streaming from a religious event without actually participating in the event. Fourthly, political disconnection. ICT development has greatly altered the political dynamics in countries around the world, especially in its ability to promote greater political knowledge and participation among the people. However, we also face the situation of political information overload, also known as infodemic. The structure of the internet, especially social media, facilitates wide-scale spread of misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation by bad actors who aim to achieve political gains. What we witness is the increasing mindset that prefers truthiness over truth in the so-called post-truth world. Therefore, ICT is ideal for propaganda creation and dissemination, false image building, fact hiding, truth suppression, and public opinion manipulation. Fifthly, economic disconnection. The adoption of ICT has had tremendous impact on the economy, especially with the increase in industrial productivity and efficiency. The benefit has not, however, evenly been spread out among the nations and peoples. Oxfam reports that in 2018, the 26 richest people in the world owned as much as 50% of the bottom half in the world. Between 2017 and 2018, the world saw a new billionaire every 2 days. Nonetheless, nearly half of humanity was surviving on less than $5.50 a day. And this inequality was not mitigated during the pandemic at all, as the rich got richer and the overwhelming world population saw their income decrease. There's also digital inequality in between countries, gender and age groups. Even in Korea, where internet penetration is nearly 100%, we also see a level of inequality in terms of age group, especially in the elders. Sixthly, human developmental disconnection. The development of ICT has allowed for access to knowledge in exponential degrees. However, pastime activity of reading a book has been replaced by skimming and scrolling online content. The ability for absorption and retention has also decreased. Knowledge becomes something that resides in electronic devices and systems outside people's minds. ICT content tends to come in small packages with sensational images and headings. This caters to the need for quick viewing and supports the habit of skimming. The consequence of this behavior is a lack of critical reflection and discernment, leading to superficial and simplistic understanding of various matters under consideration. And this is also related to online game addiction, pornography addiction, a new epidemic called context blindness, and also people tend to contrive events and activities to share, live to share, rather than sharing what they have lived. Finally, ecological disconnection. Human life is increasingly preoccupied with digital technology as reflected in the multiple gadgets that we own. The word environment must now be modified by natural to indicate what kind of environment we are referring to. We often see now nature on a screen, and many more people own robots as pets. Natural sceneries, like the one we went to yesterday, only serve to function as backgrounds for social media photos, rather than taking the time to enjoy and reflect on what is in front of us. Preoccupation with technology leads to further estrangement from the ecosystem and loss of meaningful engagement with nature. Very briefly, discerning the signs of disconnection of the times. The opportunities and pastoral challenges in the contemporary digital milieu represent the signs of the time that the Church has the duty to investigate and interpret in light of the gospel. Signs of the time must be examined for the ability to lead humanity to life and truth rather than lies and falsehood. Signs also need to be scrutinized to determine their ability to promote integral human development. Signs must be critically examined for their ability, or rather risk, to sow the seeds of conflict instead of unity, misunderstanding instead of reconciliation, and hatred instead of charity. Signs must be examined for their ability to assist in the proper formation of the younger generation, and also signs regarding the technological development must be discerned for their impact on the natural ecology. Some very brief and general proposals. Reconnection through church communication. Promoting digital leadership in the church, promoting digital literacy and wisdom among the various groups within the church, especially for church pastoral agents and communicators, initiating or updating pastoral outreach programs to address the digital age issues, training faith communicators that understand the structure and grammar of the internet, who can exercise pastoral and evangelization communication, and utilizing the internet to raise a prophetic voice, not only in content, but in demonstrating best practices. And finally, utilizing the internet to hear the voices of others, especially those who are marginalized, the youth in the synodal process, and utilizing the internet to help discern the sensus fidelium. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think the Father Anthony Luddock gave a really detailed list of different aspects of disconnections that we are experiencing these days. Let's go to the second presenter, who is Sister Teresa Wamuyu Washira from Kenya. Are you ready? And her presentation is titled as "Connected Yet Lonely: The Virtual World and the Mirage of Belonging."
So, jambo everybody. Jambo. Yes, that's how we greet from Kenya. So in my presentation, I have the introduction, then 3 key focus areas on connectivity and loneliness and the way forward. Then conclusion, the virtual spaces and beyond, where humanity will actively and creatively engage in creating communities of peace and non-violence. I speak to you as a religious sister, a scholar, and a peace non-violent practitioner. So if you look at that statistics there, this was done in 2022. These statistics have changed. You see that a lot of people are utilizing the digital world. And majority of these are young people. It's not showing there, but 1.2 billion young people are engaged in digital world. And that constitutes 16%. In my own country, 75% are young people and also engaging. So what does this mean? That people locally and globally are engaged, they communicate, and therefore the world has become what we call a global village. People are interacting with each other. The communities have been brought together in a special space, but majority of these are young people. As we can see from that study in the US, that 18 to 22 years of age are engaged in technology. However, there is a disconnect. And this is the disconnect that the media needs to look for ways of dealing with this disconnect. So, my key areas of focus in this presentation, one is sense of belonging and isolation. So there is a paradox. And then rootedness in God. Where does God come in this digital world? So that it creates meaningful and creative hyperconnectivity. And thirdly, navigating the physical, virtual spaces and beyond, the metaphase, to create peace. How do we do that? So one, the sense of belonging. We can see that it's a trademark of our contemporary world, that people are actually connecting in the spaces that we have heard from our speaker before me. However, while they are connecting, there is an element of disconnect, and that is a paradox that we need to address. So you can see here, they are all connected actually. However, how are they connecting? We need to ask ourselves that question. Then connected, you look at the word, I would like you to concentrate on the word colonized. Those of us who experience colonization, and even today we have colonization of the mind, where we are being colonized, our minds are being twisted around. And therefore, we find that the self can also be colonized within itself. And that's what we need as media to ask ourselves, how do we deal with that? That is from Brubaker, where he's talking about the issue of colonization, conscripting the self into the service of technology. So we kind of are swallowed by technology. So there are people substituting online relationships for real relationships. And therefore, that is creating the loneliness that we are talking about, and that has been written about by an American psychological, an American psychologist, and that is very recent in 2019. And then we come to Pope Francis actually saying that the young people are becoming social hermits. Therefore, revealing a disconnect with the culture, revealing the fabric of our society is getting disconnected, and that should worry us as communicators in social media. We should be very, very worried that the young people who are forming the today's and future generation are being disconnected by social media and all this hyper-connected world. So we need to see how do we address that for our future generation. Now, those are cases, narratives from my own country. I interviewed quite a number of young people. I've just picked a sample. And I would like, for the first narrative, to look at the phrase, befriending our mobile phones. Befriending, they are making friendship with the mobile phone. What does that mean for us as people who are engaged in this way? And in fact, recently in Kenya, there was a child who said, in my next life, I would like to be a television. And he was asked, why do you want to be a television? Because in that way, my parents will pay attention to me. Because the parents were engaged by just watching the television. Another example was a child who was left in the bath. And she said, please, when you see mommy, tell her, I'm still in the bath, waiting to be washed. And where was the mother? She was Facebook. She was on Facebook. Had forgotten that she had a child she was to prepare. So this child was just communicating something. Then we note that in Kenya, like in all the other parts of the world, most students had to switch to online learning. And a lot of students went to online. However, of course, the poor ones could not afford. But those who were able to go online, we found that a lot of these felt deserted, alone, and frustrated because they didn't have that link with their lecturers. And so this is also happening in our virtual world. We are linking, and yet we are delinking as well. So what are the challenges that we are facing? One is the patterns of being connected with social media today. It's forming a fertile ground for mental health and also entrenching loneliness and lack of sense of belonging. And then, this is very important, the next one, the watering down of religious, cultural values, beliefs and norms, the society that influence the society. And we need to worry about that. What type of generation are we creating? Then there are more challenges, as we can see there. In my own culture, in African culture, we had stories being told to children. The values were passed through stories. We are losing that because of the virtual world. But however, that is not a total loss. We can actually reconnect by looking what are the new forms of bringing this home to our generations. Not throwing away, but bringing the new and the old together, as we saw in the dance this morning. And then the virtual spaces and beyond, we have to see how are we going to create spaces where virtues of just peace can be created and lived. There is a book that some of my colleagues and I wrote, and it's available online. Now, for these virtues also to form conversation in the digital world and beyond, we need to have a paradigm shift. And what paradigm shift is that? We will have to identify it here, if we can, and if we can't, we continue that conversation. And of course, those spaces where we connect to love and to be loved. As Jesus said, Jesus came that we may have life and have it more abundantly. So lastly, I have questions. I'm a teacher, a lecturer, so there are questions for homework. And the first question there is, how do we navigate between the physical and the virtual without losing sight of who we are today and who we hope to be in the future? What do we need to do to self-regulate on what we are assessing in the virtual spaces and beyond? And then in what ways can we as church familiarize, form and be formed, re-evangelize to address the challenges created by today's reality in reference to present virtual spaces and the unfolding metaverse in order to create communities of peace in the digital world. Now, those are questions that we need to interact with. And then in conclusion, I end the way I also began with the Pope Francis. The journey continues in searching for ways of creative and meaningful communication using a network created not to entrap, but to liberate, to protect a communion of people who are free. And that's where I would like to end, and those are some of the references I used and many more. My own experience as well, since I'm 24 hours with young people. And asanteni sana, that's our way of saying thank you in Kenya.
Okay, thank you so much for another very insightful presentations. Now we all have homeworks to do, right? You want to take a time to work on that, right? Okay, I think so far we have been hearing about how we have been doing in the past and also at present time, and also actually in the next two presentations, I think presenters will talk about where should we go and what should we do in the future. Okay, so third presenter of this session will be Dr. Natasha Govekar from Vatican. Her presentation, the title is Gaining a New Perspective and Shifting from Dismay to Hope. Okay.
Thank you. Good morning to everyone, and thank you very much for this occasion to reflect with you from a theological pastoral perspective about what we should or shouldn't do in the future. And let me start by quoting the words of a well-known theologian, Karl Barth. There are many matters in which the Church could well be more modern than she is, but the time is beginning already in which having the courage to be old and human is going to be the most modern thing at all. Having the courage to be human is going to be the most modern thing at all. These words, written more than half a century ago, sound even more provocative today. In effect, according to some scholars like Father Paolo Benanti, the generation of people born in the last decade may be the last human generation, at least insofar as how we have understood this term thus far. The category of human nature is actually losing its meaning due to the synthetic reality that puts us before the philosophical, ethical, and practical challenges depicted by post-humanism. For Father Benanti, post-humanism is not another futuristic movement in the sense that it is not looking at the possible future, but present reality, because it recognizes that a radical change in the way of being human has already taken place. What seems to be clear anyway is that the human being that will abide in the future will be a wandering being, a being in search, and that people who are still very young today will necessarily have to answer at least three fundamental questions: the relationship of humanity with the environment, the relationship of humanity with technology, and the relationship with humanity with itself. Now, what if we were to address this scenario right from the fourth question? Some already do. For example, Dr. Felicia Wu Song, a cultural sociologist of media and digital technologies, who recently wrote a book, Restless Devices, Recovering Personhood, Presence, and Place in the Digital Age. Dr. Wu Song's research is not just another dark picture about the negative consequences of digital technology. Her purpose is instead inviting her readers to turn back to the sources of living water, that are hidden in our Christian tradition. Maybe what we need, she writes, is not so much more knowledge about technology, but more knowledge and understanding about being human. In particular, what it means that being human is an experience that is situated in time and place within our corporal bodies and in our relationships with the divine and our neighbor. Maybe the church needs to change its posture of trying to compete with the allure of media entertainment and the digital, merely countering distraction with more distraction. Instead, perhaps she ought to trust that people actually want what is inherently built into DNA of Christianity, the promise that the presence of Christ in us and with us is life transformative. End of quote. So looking at the technological innovations that extend our notion of connectivity beyond the limits of time and space, we are approached with a similar promise of fulfillment. Since its beginning, the internet was meant to be a space of equality, freedom, connection, happiness, a way to be free from the limitations of time, space, and the vulnerability of our bodies. But is the notion of such an extension of time and space really a technological achievement? And can such a promise of freedom and happiness really be fulfilled by the technology? While it is true that technology, every technology, is never just a tool because it represents a cultural and societal shift, but I think we can all agree that such promises of fulfillment were probably not linked to the invention of the hammer or the knife. So the problem of our future is not technology in and of itself, but the expectations that are assigned to it. The problem is not so much being hyper-connected. In that case, it would be good enough to simply disconnect. The problem is what is passing through these connections and consequently what is filling our heart. Therefore, the more exponential technological developments becomes, the more urgent it is for us to recover an integral spiritual vision of who we are as human beings. Looking at the future from a Christian perspective means not just talking about the virtues and vices of the digital technologies. It is much more. Christian perspective means to try as baptized persons to read the spiritual meaning of what is happening around us and in us, to dive into the sources of our theological and spiritual tradition. How can we, as Christians, recover a spiritual vision of time and space that we learn from the liturgy? And what can biblical anthropology reveal us about the natural desire to connect to others and the extreme fragility and loneliness that especially affects our young generation? We know that as human beings, we are made at the image of God. We are created for communion. But we also know that since the very first moment human beings existed, we tend to believe in a false promise of divinization. As soon as we turn from the source of communion, we tend to use everything, nature, relationships, our own intelligence, and the technological extensions of our intelligence as well, to cover and hide our fragility and our nakedness. And we know that with our baptism, our capacity for communion was recovered in Christ. And it is exactly because of Christ that for us as Christians, embodiment matters. Jesus was born with the body, he died with his body, he resurrected with his body. After he returned to the Father, everything that he went through with his body flowed into the sacraments. He entered into the heavenly Jerusalem, the heavenly sanctuary, and didn't leave us here alone, but left for us an open way or pilgrimage through which heaven is poured out upon us. Yes, embodiment matters. Our flesh is the land from which and in which the tree of eternal life is to grow, the land that God wants to make flourishing. Each time we participate in the Eucharist, we participate in the universal body of Christ, and we connect with the heavenly Jerusalem, where all times and all spaces meet. We are connected to all the saints of all times, the first Adam and to the last child that still has to be born in this world. We are fully connected and together. We see each other as we will appear in the light of heaven, and this is our source of joy. Indeed, the overcoming of the boundaries of time and space is not a technological achievement. It is something we experience even without knowing it each time we participate in the Eucharist, where we enter into the universal communion of the body of Christ. The liturgical and sacramental vision teaches us to see below the surface of the things. In the liturgy, this world becomes illuminated by the fire of the other world. The empirical world becomes transparent, and through the transparency of this world, the radiant splendor of the other worlds become visible. Indeed, the future that we as Christians contemplate is the horizon of the heavenly Jerusalem. From this perspective, we are called not to imitate the world, but to surprise the world with the joy of the fulfillment that we already taste, even if it is yet to come. Indeed, it is from here, from this liturgical vision of the future, that we gain the capacity to discern the present, to understand which experiences taste like the kingdom of God and which don't. Therefore, our creativity for the future is not and cannot be in competition with the wonderful technological discoveries, whatever they are and will be. We are called to make something new or better, to let God do something new in us and through us as we draw our creativity from the memory of our final destination, of our heavenly future. The challenges that the future generation will have to deal with will certainly be global challenges and will require a global collaborative capacity and coordination. Therefore, it is urgent to learn to act not as individuals, but as community. As Christians, we have communion in our DNA. The Holy Spirit enables us to abandon our self-occupied self, to open our heart to the others and embrace our belonging to universal fraternity. As Christians, we are called to give our contribution to shape the formation of communities that will be able to overcome the loneliness of our hyper-connected present. As Christian communicators, we are called even more to bear witness to a style of communication that is not just individual engagement, but a way of community building and belonging. And I have to confess that when I sent the title of my reflection to the organizers, I wasn't aware how ambitious it was. Of course, even if I could keep talking for hours, my words would never be able to really help in gaining a new perspective and shifting from dismay to hope. Therefore, let me conclude with the word that is able to generate hope, the word of God, by quoting one of my favorite Bible verses, so old, so human, so modern. Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? Isaiah 43:19. Indeed, the Lord is already at work. Let's keep our attention focused on what is springing forth from His care for us.
Okay, thank you so much for reminding us that we have a communion in our DNA. Okay, let me introduce our last but not the least presenter, who is Dr. Paolo Granata from Canada. The title of his presentation is going to be Media Ecology for a Sustainable Future, Visions from the Present.
Hello. So hello everyone. My name is Paolo Granata. I live in Canada. I'm a professor at the University of Toronto, but I'm Italian. That's why I speak English with this perfect Italian accent. So I'm very glad to be here. So thank you for your presentations, and I hope there will be time for continuing the discussion. And really, the ecology of media within which we live. This is my topic. So the idea that communication is a communion, right? We are interconnected. This is the nature, our human nature. And among the things that make us humans, as Paolo Ruffini reminded us, is that we live together. We need to live together. We are interconnected. Media ecology means conceiving media as an ecosystem, as an environment within which we live, we undertake our lives. And so, interconnectedness, togetherness are the keywords for today's topic. And I wanted to start with a picture. These are my students, my beautiful students in the University of Toronto, and I usually take them every year in the Silicon Valley in California for critically understanding what's going on out there at the forefront of developments and technology. And so, these are my beautiful students. This is the Computer History Museum. And there is a quote which is interesting. The first line is a passage from the Bible, actually. We become what we behold. The rest is Marshall McLuhan's. We shape our tools, and then our tools shape us. And this is another component of what makes us humans. The idea that we are able to create the condition that conditions us. We created those conditions. This is what makes us human. We are able to create new environments because technologies and media are not just tools. They are the environments within which we live, within which we undertake our life. And so there is another quote I wanted to share with you. This is the American satirist and writer, Mark Twain. To a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail, isn't it? Except for my sister. She's a judge, and she uses the hammer to send people to jail, actually. Right. But this is clever. This is something very clever in here. There are some intrinsic qualities in any technology. There are some intrinsic characteristics that are embedded in any technology. And this is our challenge as educators, professional communicators, to really understand what is the intended or unintended implication of any new technology, any new medium. What are the ethical implications of any new medium or any new technology? This is our challenge as educators. Finding, right, what is the nail, how any technology can be really undertaking new possibilities for the good or for the bad. So now, I have a question. What is the first thing you do in the morning, which is the same thing you do at the night before going to sleep? I see. Well, for most of us, it's this, with a few exceptions. And I wanted to do an experiment. Take your cell phone. Take your cell phone. Take your cell phone. All right, including my fellow speakers, if you have it. I don't mind, no problem. But take your cell phone, unlock it, put your code, unlock it. Right? Wonderful. Unlock it. Unlocked. All right. And now, pass it to the person to your right, next to your right. Pass it to the person to your right. So, I know what you are feeling. I perfectly know what you're feeling. It's tremendous. Your entire life, our entire life, it's there now in someone else's hands, right? The entire life in one technology, one medium. And this is what we can really understand another Marshall McLuhan's great motto from Toronto. The medium is the message, that's the most popular, but next, he said, the user is the content. For the better, for the good, we are the content of our media environment, the media within which we live. We are part of this. We have a responsibility for changing the content. We have a responsibility for being part of the social media. And I have another question, actually. Do you use the social media? Raise your hand. Right. Well, wrong answer and wrong question. Social media use you, right? That's clever. But that's another way to reflect on how this is important. We are the content, and we have, again, a chance, we have a possibility to make a difference. And so, because online and offline, there's a clever neologism coined by my colleague at Oxford, Luciano Flori, the on life. Online life is a real life. It's a misunderstanding that what's happening online is different than what's happening in real life, right? They are practical implications of our life, online and offline. This is an important awareness, an important understanding in the way media interact each other, in the way we live in the media. And speaking of awareness, again from Marshall McLuhan, water is unknown to a fish until it discovers air. This is clever for two reasons. Firstly, we usually take for granted the water within we swim. We take for granted the media within we live. We take for granted how this environment has become invisible. Again, we take it for granted. But like the fish, we have another possible challenge to face. That is to discover air, to raise awareness and not take for granted the invisible pressure, the invisible environment that affects us. And so that's our mission, to discover air, to raise awareness, to go beyond, like my fellow speakers said. Going beyond means finding a different way of doing things. For instance, with my students, I do undertake a digital detox. For 3 days, we seal the cell phones in an envelope, and we experience a digital detox, a total disconnectedness of everything. And so that's a way to experience. When you take out something, you can really appreciate and the value. They can, my students, come back and turn on again their cell phones with a different awareness after 3 days of digital detox. And so our mission as educators and professional communicators is to discover air, is to not take for granted the water within which we live. And speaking of the water within which we live, I think one of the diseases of our time that may be relevant even for the next panel on misinformation, disinformation, is that we are blind of the context. That context is taken for granted. We pay attention to the content, but context is even more important than content. The context is what makes sense of the content. We are context blindness, that's a beautiful book by Eva Berger, and a disease of our time, the semantic literacy. So we don't pay attention anymore to the context around us. And that's another challenge for us as educators and professional communicators. We are not just providing contents. Contents are everywhere. You just go on Wikipedia, you will find. Just read a good book, you will find contents. Our role is to provide a context, to make sense of a context, to better contextualize what we do. This is what's missing. This is, I think, one of the core reasons for the loneliness, for the disconnectedness, the paradox we're talking today about. Because we are not paying attention to the context. What's the context within which we are undertaking our contents, our productions and everything. And so, my recipe for looking hopefully to the future, we have an agenda. We have an agenda that can really embed a practical vision for building the future we want. It's the Agenda 2030, the global goals, the Sustainable Development Goals. And Sustainable Development Goals are not all about environmental sustainability. They are not all about environments or climate change. All those things are covered. But actually, all aspects of human life are in this human agenda. And the SDGs can even help us as communicators to build a more open, inclusive, equitable digital world. The global goals, again, are focused on education, inequalities, sustainable cities, infrastructures. Many aspects of the digital world are embedded into the global goals. And so we can practically advance SDGs. SDGs, and these are again my students at the University of Toronto, to build the future we want, before the pandemic, so no mask. This is the future. They are the future generations. And the global goals is a human rights agenda. It's based on people. It's based on a bottom-up approach. It's up to us to make a difference, to execute, to advance SDGs. At the University of Toronto, I'm the director of the Media Ethics Lab. We recently produced the SDGs Digital Inclusion Framework to foster practical digital inclusion, to help institutions and organizations apply, align SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, to the digital world, and vice versa, to unleash the potential of information and communication technologies to advancing SDGs. And so that's my message for the future. Still a few years left to the global agenda. The decade of action started in 2020, so 7, 8 years ahead. There is time to make a difference. There is time to unleash the potential of communication, the potential of togetherness and interconnectedness to build the future we want. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I think Professor Granata also gave us a big homeworks to do. A lot of big issues that we all need to think about, not only during this event, also maybe even beyond this event. Okay, so now we have 2 discussants. I think each will have only 5 minutes to share their thought on all the issues that that were shared by presenters. The first, Father Walter Shikendu Ihejirika from Nigeria, and also Dr. Majumai Pragasan, our second discussant. Okay, so you have 5 minutes.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you all, and thank you so much to the presenters. As a discussant, you know, we are not presenting any paper, but to try to tease out some lines of connections between all the papers that have been presented in order to enhance our discussions on the theme. As the chair of the session has pointed out at the beginning, the theme of our discussion is clearly an example of the English oxymoron. In other words, we have two contradictory words together in a sentence. Connection, loneliness seem contradictory. But as a point, the function of an oxymoron, as we know, is to incite us to think, to reflect. Because we asked, how come? Why can we have connection and disconnection at the same time? And loneliness at the same time. And the papers we have all had, beginning from the lead paper from the prefect, have really dealt with this issue in very good ways. And they have presented to us the wonderful situation we live today, the world of digital technology in which we are living, the great strides we have made as human beings in this area of technology. But they have also clearly highlighted the other side of the coin, the problems that are emanating from this digital technology. Father Anthony pointed out, listed at about 6 types of disconnection that emerge from the world of digital technology. We have seen other examples also that emanate even from the lived experiences of Sister Wachira about all these problems of digital technology. And all the other papers have highlighted this fact that digital technology, despite the good side of it, they have the potential also of making us disconnected and losing our sense of connection as human beings. But that's not the last part of the story. As we found out, most of the presenters go beyond the difficulties to look towards the future, and especially as it regards us as Catholic journalists. And these are the areas I would like us to focus more attention. What are we to do? Instead of lamenting the darkness, we are now being called to light a candle. And as Catholic journalists, they gave us some pathways to light this candle. And these are the ones I would like to highlight here. I will begin from the lead paper of the prefect, where he made it clear that we need to understand the fact that there is a difference between connection and communication. We are not just called to connect, we are called to communicate. And as Catholics, we are also called to treat that issue of communication as self-giving, sacrifice. And that's also the fact that communication, as Catholic communicators, we have to live the paradox of living sometimes against the trends of the time, the logic of the time, the ideologies that govern the media practice of the time, and which is most often the logic of politics, the logic of finance, and the logic of domination. And what we are called is to move towards the other side of the logic of the beatitude, which is sometimes contradictory. That happiness can be found in poverty, contradictory, but that's what we are called to do. That we can be good only by being helpful to others, by swimming against the current. And he made that beautiful phrase, which I want us also to bear in mind, that sometimes it's not easy when we swim against the current, but he said that it is only when the ego flies against the wind that it is able to soar. So when we have the strength to fight against the currents of the time, we'll be able to rise and then to fly higher, to show the world how to become connected, even in the midst of the loneliness we feel. And that also goes again to the second point about what we have to do, made by the last speaker, the associate professor, who made it clear that part of our function as Catholic journalists is to make effort to promote the millennium goals. By promoting it, we are also finding ways of making us to become more connected to share that communion. And that communion, Dr. Natasha made clear, is in our DNA as Christians. We can't but communicate. We can't but live with communion. Sometimes we may have the fear, can we do it? Sometimes we may have the fear, are we not standing old in the midst of new technologies? But she makes it clear that we should not be afraid to seem, the church is not old, because the message of the Catholic Church remains perennial. Even what seems old in the Catholic Church is continually very, very relevant to the current technology, the current society we live. We should not be afraid. We should not be afraid to live who we are, to live our identity as Catholics. Because one of the problems we have sometimes, we feel that the outside identity is better than our own. And we tend to move out of our identity in order to wear the garb of other realities. The challenge is for us to be Catholic, remain who we are, and try to do the job we are. It is tough, but we can do it. And she ended by saying something that drew my mind back to one of the iconic films of, we know the film of George Lucas, 1979, the Star Wars, the first of the Star Wars. You know, the subtitle that was later added in it is The Return of Hope. You know, it was a sign of hope. And the iconic phrase that was said by Obi-Wan Kenobi to Skywalker as he sent him out to do, he said, the force be with you, or go with the force. You know, it's a phrase we know very well. And I believe that that's part of what Dr. Natasha is telling us, that we have the force. And what is the force? The force is Jesus in the Eucharist. And when we have that force, we have the capacity to swim against the current, fly higher against the tide, and be able to show the world this is the best way to connect. This is the best way to live. And that best way is communion. And that is what we are called to do. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. And Dr. Pragasam.
Good afternoon to all of you, respected moderator, speakers, panelists, and fellow discussants, and dear friends. After listening to all the presentations, if someone asks me, are you confused or enlightened? Without any hesitation, I would certainly say I am highly enlightened. I feel really excited, enlightened to listen to all the speakers for the simple reason they have not only highlighted all the issues, but they have given lots of alternative solutions and methodologies how to solve these problems. So thank you very much for all your wonderful, powerful, short, sharp presentations. Dr. Paolo Ruffini says, the paradox of our time is division, at times so connected and dense with isolation. Once a lady went to a mobile shop and gave her a little phone and then asked the shopkeeper, there is something wrong with the phone. Can you repair and give it to me? And the owner picked up the phone and he checked it and then said, there's nothing wrong with the phone. You know, why do you bring the phone here? Because I don't get calls from my son. That's a real problem, okay? Then the shopkeeper told, there is nothing wrong with the phone, but something wrong with your son. Yeah. So, this is exactly what Dr. Natasha has written in her paper, Throwaway Culture. The old age homes are getting full. The age-old joint family system has become a rare phenomenon. Sister Teresia puts the onus on the hyperconnectivity, making it responsible for all the gap between the local and global worlds. She diagnoses the issue to be humanity restlessness of heart due to disconnection with the reality and one another. She also beautifully gives a solution, a wonderful solution that all of us have to practically apply in our life. We need to talk to each other. Very simple. Sometimes very simple solutions are difficult to put into practice. We need to talk to each other, we need to renew our relationship, and we need to liberate ourselves. Father Luduk says clearly, only through critical reflection, the church can actively and effectively devise plans aiming at reconnection, interconnection, and solidarity. This is a very, very important point I feel. He says online games, addiction, pornography, context blindness have become a major issue among the youth. And Sister Teresa reinforces this point, saying the exposure to social media and strangers during the lockdown period have pushed them into virtual world than the real world. I go to parents to teach about media education, etc. And lots of complaints from the teachers and the parents. What are the complaints? The children are not able to read and write. They have forgotten. They have forgotten how to read. They have forgotten how to write. And they are very restless and they have become very violent. And the worst part of the whole story is they have become drug addicts. You know, 10th standard, 11th standard, 12th standard, the place where I come from, Catholic schools. Would you believe? The teachers complain that the girl children, the boy children take into drugs. The so-called drug name is Cool Lips. You know, if you put that small pill for 3 hours, you don't know what's happening in front of you. They put it inside the mouth, wear the mask, come and sit and do nothing. And there's no point in complaining to other people. The parents defend their children. And what I like in the presentation are the solutions suggested by all of them. Dr. Paulo says very clearly, let us contribute to the existing efforts. Okay, on one side, we will try to chart out new ways of attacking the issues. At the same time, very importantly, you say, let us contribute to the existing effort. There are a lot of good efforts going on. Let's join our hands. Let's collaborate, cooperate, support, and do something together. Let us integrate digital inclusions, strategies of UN global goals in our initiatives. This particular point, I was highly impressed upon. Thank you very much, Doctor, for that. He firmly says an equitable digital access infrastructure strategy will develop resilient environment and support human being efforts. Thank you very much. I am deeply touched by two important solutions. All the solutions by all the speakers are very impressive, but among them, two solutions are very, very impressive. I want to share with you as my concluding point. Dr. Natasha says, let's move from individual engagement to community building. This is something very, very crucial. Quoting Pope's views, God's style is closeness, compassion, and tenderness. She says, the future for us is kingdom of God. Very clear, non-negotiable. I like this particular point very much. The future for us is kingdom of God. Let us surprise the world with creativity that springs from the memory of the future. This is an amazing phrase. Thank you, Dr. Natasha, for this. The second one is from Dr. Ruffini, who said, the web should liberate us, not imprison us. Weave the web with truth and beauty of faith and hope. We need technology with ethics and thoughtfulness. You know, we usually teach in media education, the oil in the glass, how to remove the oil. You pour more water. The more you pour, the oil comes up and spill over. Finally, the glass is filled with water of goodness. This is a beautiful classical example. Wherever I go, I tell the students. We need to build communities. Let us give it a new meaning. The beauty of encounter. Highly loaded words are used by Dr. Ruffini. The beauty of encounter, dialogue, knowledge, relationship, and sharing. Let us fill up the minds with spirit of gratitude, sharing, and solidarity. This is something amazing. Let me conclude with this point. As Dr. Ruffini says, the digital world is not ready-made. It did not fall from anywhere. It's we who created it. We ourselves can change it. So the responsibility lies with you, me, and each one of us. Nobody else from outside world is going to come and change. NLP, the neuroscience, says if you want to achieve success in your life, in the first place, you should know what you want. We need to want connections, communities, and relationship. Absolutely, there is no magic pill. Let us create an environment for connections using all creative methodologies available on earth. Thank you very much.
Okay, I want to thank you to discussants for sharing wonderful reflections on the key issues that we thought about this morning. The issue is big, but time is short. But actually, we were originally supposed to have about 10 minutes of discussion time, but because of the delay in the previous session, we are already quite behind the schedule. So unfortunately, we are not able to have time for discussion, but my suggestion is, I think all the presenters and discussants will stay here at least for a while. So if you have any pressing questions or comments, you can come up to the stage after this session, and then you can approach anyone you want to talk with. Okay, thank you all for coming to this session, and I'll also give my special thanks to all the presenters and discussants who share wonderful thoughts and insights. Okay, this concludes our session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your attention for such a long time. There's a line in this Genesis, it's not good for a man to be alone, so I will make him the right partner. It occurred to me that God doesn't want people to be alone or isolated, so he prepared this occasion for us so that there's no isolated and lonely soul in this digital world. So this brings us the end of the first session of study days of the SIGNIS World Congress 2022, Hyper-Connected Yet Alone. From 2 p.m. after lunch, we'll start the International Journalist Forum here with a special performance. And I'd like to thank everyone who has joined us today. Well, we have a short announcement right after this session. Outside the conference hall, we are gifting love the new rosaries donated by the Catholics all over Korea. So we have received nearly 100,000 rosaries. So please take as much as you need and use them for your pastoral activities and as presents. They're donated with love by many Koreans, so we have plenty and they're completely free. Okay, so this will end the first session for today. This was MC Mikaela, Semili. Thank you. And to